I think we want to remember from last chapter, or from the last chapter, I should say, that um, it's not individuals that evolve. It's what that evolves.
Population.
Yeah, so populations are what is evolving, and not a specific individual. Okay, so that means that natural selection is acting on individuals, and then evolution is happening in the population. So individuals undergo natural selection. And because of this, it's populations that evolve. Right? Now, is we undergo, or as an individual undergoes this natural selection event, I think we could agree that natural selection again was the survival of the fittest. And what makes you fit? Right, you have the good or the bad traits, right? So survival of the fittest would equate to good traits, survival, bad traits, not survival. And I should say it's not really survival. I mean, it is to some large degree that it's survival, but it's really more about reproduction, the passing off of those traits. Whereas the bad traits, for whatever reason, they cause no reproduction. We all in that zone? Are we all even paying attention? Okay. Want to make sure we got that. Good? Uh, me? Oh, okay. Did I mispronounce something? Oh, okay.
But can you also say that, like, in certain environments, like if a population was in different regions, that for like a good trait could be useful in one region, but like a bad trait in another region?
Right. So really, it's survival of the fittest, and then the disclaimer of that statement would be in that specific environment. Yeah, because like you, as you said, it could be bad here, but it could be great somewhere else. Like I think yesterday I'd used in some class, maybe it was this one. I used like bad attitudes as an example. Let's say that bad attitudes was a horrible trait. Well, if you have a bad attitude, then probably one, you won't make it, or two, you won't have a child because you won't get married. I mean, that's not true at all. But let's just pretend that it was. Well, then what would happen? Well, your bad attitude allele, your bad attitude DNA, would go as you go, and in other words, as you pass on, your bad attitude goes with you, of course, and you probably haven't had a child, so therefore the bad attitude allele is less in the population. But maybe there's somewhere in the world where bad attitudes are great to have. Well, then you would be selected for. Does that make sense? That's really negative. Joseph? Yes, sir.
I hope I'm not too far wrong, but is there like, especially for like animals, maybe, is there like a sense that, say an animal has like bad traits, is there a sense that tells it like, okay, I need to migrate somewhere else to where I can actually fit?
Not really, no. I mean, if there are animals that like realize that, hey, I can't eat anything here, I need to go somewhere else to eat. But like if like if you have like a little sheep or like a little lamb, I'm sorry, that's born and then like it's a runt, and it's not chosen for a mate, like it doesn't look in the mirror and say like, wow, I'm an ugly little thing. You're like, no wonder, I'm not having children. It doesn't, there's no. Now, so the animal instinct that would work on migration and movement would be, I'm hungry, predator, something along those lines. Cool. Let's see. Let's talk about mutations and how they fit into the mix of this stuff. We know the mutations are changes in the DNA. In the genetic code. They're usually accidental. And of course, we know that they give rise to, or they are allowing the creation, new genes. And alleles. We all remember what an allele is, right? Big T is an allele, little t is an allele. So like if I mutate, or if my cells in my little finger right here mutate, and now I have super finger, it's got a laser that points out of it, which would be the coolest stuff in the world, I think. I probably won't pass it on to my kids because the mutation happened on my finger. If you were talking about mutations being passed on to your children, where do the mutations have to occur? Right, so only gamete mutations passed on to children. Or maybe children isn't even the best word. I should say maybe just offspring. Be very general. Because children would allude to the fact that that's happening to us and it's really not. Because if you think about it, a mutated cell, that's not that often. And it's only one of your cells that ends up being a part of the baby. So like for your one cell that ends up in the baby to be the mutated one out of the bunch, very unlikely. And then plus, usually when you talk about having organisms that are on our scale of good, usually the mutation is going to cause something bad. Does that make sense? Like when all of your genes are coding for like human stuff, and humans are like the dominant species, then to mutate a gene probably means that you're going to do something bad to it. It would be very, very unique to take a human gene and mutate it and not make it bad, but make it super. I mean, hopefully that makes sense. So, you know, as things get, it's just like proofing a paper. You all have written papers before. I'm sure you all have proofed papers before, correct? You know, like the first time you proof it, it's pretty ugly looking little paper. You can find mistakes just about anywhere. But by about the 17th draft or so, because you should, I think, proof about 20 times. Once you get to about like time 17, you probably will not find a single mistake at all, right? You shouldn't, right? Okay, no one's agreeing, so I think you shouldn't. We all know about mutations, though, right? No? Certainly low in occurrence, unlikely to happen. Typically having a negative effect. And when I say low in occurrence, I really should maybe make an addendum to that and say that that's a true statement for plants and animals. Remember, bacteria, their mutation rate's actually much larger. They don't treat their DNA with as much respect as we do. If you want to put a figure or a number with that, it's like one mutation for every 10 to the 5th genes per generation, which means you might mess up one gene in 50 neighboring cells. Maybe.
Why is it so negative?
Again, like when you start to have a perfect paper, like you would say that a human or a plant is, to do a mutation, to make a change on that paper after you've proofed it 17 or 18 times, your change is going to be for the negative. You would have already made the change. I mean, like what change would you? Okay, I'll ask you a question. What would you change about your DNA that would make you better? What one change could you make? What one single A to T could you change that would make you more adapt? You know, like the laser out of your finger, that's not going to be changing like an A to a C or